in my soul. Remember redemption's hill, where your blood was spilled for my ransom. Everything I once held dear, I count it all as lost. Lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Lead me to the cross.
You were as I, tempted and tried. You led. The word became flesh, bore my sin and death. Now you're risen. Everything I once held dear, I count it all as lost. Lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Lead me
to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees and lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Lead me to your heart.
to your heart.
Lead me to your heart.
To your heart.
To your heart. Amen. God bless you. Thank you for joining.
Bless you, Kelsey.
See you next week.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. How's it going? I see there's some people on. Anthony, how's it going, buddy? I see Ethan over on YouTube. And thanks so much for joining. Sorry, I'm dropping my stuff over here. Really weird Periscope tonight. Barely anybody in there. It's kind of odd. I'm just checking to make sure. Wait a minute, I hear myself. This can't be good. When I can hear myself. That means there's something on somewhere. That's alright. Not sure. What's going on? Thanks for joining Atari 2600 Gamer. What's going on, my friend? Welcome to the broadcast. Welcome to another Jesus Did It broadcast. And I'm just trying to find my stream over here on YouNow, because I just want to make sure that it's actually working and make sure it's, functional. What's going on? Never gonna quit. Blessings, blessings. How are you doing? Thanks for joining. And Jason Wallace, that's me. There, let's try that. And I'm gonna switch over that in a minute. But come on, you can do it. You can do it. Today goes swell. Today was alright. A little bit stressful here and there, but what are you gonna do? Looks like my shirt is interacting with the green a little bit, so hopefully it's not too bad. It actually looks like it's going in and out. It's kind of weird. It's like an electric. Let's see. Alright, cool. So we've got sound over on you finished that collab on Smule? You did too, Jay. And you know what? We ought to play that one. Let's do that. I didn't even listen to it yet, to be honest with you. I'm going to be really honest with you. I didn't even watch it yet. But, because I've been super, super duper busy. Hey, Angel, thanks for joining. Guys, thanks for all of your invites and follows and shares. You guys are amazing at that, and I do thank you so much for doing that. Thanks for sharing out on Facebook, and the new sharing thing that we figured out on Periscope, which really, I'm gonna have to adjust my camera thing here, where I might have to go. Hey, Amy Stein, thanks so much for joining in the broadcast. Yeah, there we go. At least it's not flickering too much. That's kind of crazy looking. Anyways, okay, couldn't sound better because I didn't use. Oh, you didn't use headphones. Oh no. Oh no, that's not good. Thank you for inviting followers. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for letting other people know about this broadcast and all the Jesus Did It broadcasts. Because we're just here to bring the truth of Jesus Christ to the airwaves, so to speak. Right? Hey, Seeker of Truth, thanks for joining. So, so definitely thank you for being here and thank you for supporting. I'm like hovering my shirt. I might have to go adjust that camera. Hold on. Let me do that while we're doing the singing thingy. So, I don't know, Jay, is it good enough to put up on a broadcast or what, man? I don't want to put studio mastering on Smule, that makes it sound decent. But you still gotta use that headphones, dude. Come on now. Headphones is the only way to make it sound good. Because it's how it is. Sometimes it's just like, well, we'll try it. If people's ears start bleeding, then we'll have to turn it. We'll have to turn it off. It's just how it is, right? Let's try it though. Listen, we'll praise our God. This is what we do. Yeah, let's do that. Where is that? I know I just saw it. Oh, I can only imagine. Yes, it is. Alright. Okay, sounds good. Alright, we'll try it. I was blessed by having a lot of people join the broadcast, or join the song, which is really cool. Alright, here we go. We're going to give it a go. Let me know. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Jay, it's up to you. It's your call. It's not too bad, I guess. J&J.
I can only imagine what it'll be like when I walk by your side. I only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Yeah.
Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in all you be still?
Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak it all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
I can only imagine when it goes down, and I find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine. If all I will do is forever worship you, I could only imagine. I could only imagine.
Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in all of you be still?
Will I stand in your presence, or to mine will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine.
Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in all of you be still?
Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all?
I can only imagine, yeah. I can only imagine.
Yes, Lord. I can only imagine. Yeah. I can only imagine.
I can only imagine.
I can only
I can only imagine when all I will do is forever worship you. I can only imagine.
So it didn't sound too bad. It was a little tinny sounding, but that's what happens. What's going on? Joshua's over on Joshua Rosario. My friend, what's going on? Mary Ellen Bonner's in the house. How are you doing, friend? And thanks for joining on Facebook. And yes, awesome. Cool. All right, that was a good song. Next time use headphones, Jay. And but yeah, that was a good one. I want to do another song. And yeah. So this was our monthly birthday song from the SGE, from this Smeal Gospel Experience. So here I wanted to share this with you. Anybody who has an October birthday, I want to say happy birthday to you. And we sang a song for the October birthday. So here we go.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you.
You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you.
You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you.
Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper,
Light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you, I worship you.
You are here, healing every heart. I worship you, I worship you.
You are here, turning lives around. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you, I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you
Wipe away all tears. You mend the broken hearts. You're the answer to it all, Jesus. You wipe away all tears. You mend the broken hearts. You're the answer to it all, Jesus.
waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are.
Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, meeting every need. I worship you, I worship you.
So that was our happy birthday song to all those who have a birthday in October. And the Cupcake Lovers, thanks for joining. Hey, Sue's in the house. JR's in the house. Who else? We got Dizzy, baby. Hey, how's it going? How are you guys doing? I got Jay. Alright, blessings, blessings. Saved by the One is here as well. And we got a bunch of people coming in. It's becoming a good broadcast. So, hey, Jungle Guy, thanks for being here on You Now. And yeah, so we're got. You know what? I'm thinking more. Let's do that. Thinking more worship every time. So, Here we go.
He is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bended beneath the weight of his wind and mercy.
When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me.
And oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so.
He is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy.
When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections for me. He
loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves.
and we are his portion and he is our prize.
Drawn to redemption by the grace of his eyes.
His grace is an ocean we're all sinking.
And heaven meets earth like an unforeseen
And
kiss.
my heart turns violently inside of my chest.
I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way
Oh,
He really does love us, and we need to understand that there is so much grace there that we don't need anything but that. And we need to not get so confused with all that. You know, it's a real simple thing to be saved. It's a real simple thing for grace. We just have to believe it.
They say sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. And right now I'm losing bad.
I've stood on this stage night after night, reminding the broken it'll be alright. Right now, oh right now I just can't.
It's easy to sing when there's nothing to bring me down.
But what will I say when I'm held to the flame like I am right now?
I know you're able and I know you can see through the fire with your mighty hand. Even if you don't, my hope is you alone.
They say it only takes a little faith to move a mountain. Well, good thing a little faith is all I have right now.
But God, when you choose to leave mountains unmovable, oh, give me the strength to be able to sing. It is well with my soul.
I know you're able and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. I know the sorrow and I know the hurt will all go away if you just say the word. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone.
You've been faithful, you've been good all my days.
Jesus, I will cling to you, come what may.
'Cause I know you're able.
I know you can. I know you're able, and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. I know the sorrow, and I know the hurt will all go away if you just say the word. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. My hope is in you alone. It is well with my soul.
It is well, it is well with my soul.
Whew. Yes, it is a great song, isn't it, Ashley? Thanks so much for joining and being a #1 fan on YouNow. I appreciate that. And That is, it is a good song, and definitely is a good before bed stuff. This is my turning down from the day, right? And just, winding down, and this is my time to do that. And I share it with you guys because what better thing to do than to just share the greatness that is that is in our Lord and our Savior, and just be able to share that day, that the goodness that's there. And we tend not to think about certain things, right? We tend to just bury it away, and I say don't. I say express it, get it out, and let it not be with you. Don't let it be retching inside of you. And know who you are, because the battle's already won. This is the amazing part, is the battle's already been won. We just have to accept it. Thank you so much for all your shares, your likes, your invites, your follows. Thank you so much for that. You're not spreading me. It's not about me. It's all about Jesus. And that's what we do here. So thank you so much.
Oh, my soul, oh, how you worry, oh, how you're weary from fearing you've lost control. This was the one thing you didn't see coming, and no one would blame you, though. If you cried in private, if you tried to hide it away, so no one knows, no one will see if you stop believing. Oh, my soul, you are not alone. There's a place where fear has to face the God you know. One more day, He will make a way. Let Him show you how you can lay this down. 'Cause you're not alone. Here and now, you can be honest. I won't try to promise that someday it all works out. 'Cause this is the valley, and even now He is breathing on your dry bones. And there will be dancing, and there will be beauty where beauty was ash and stone. This much I know. Oh, my soul, you are not alone. There's a place where fear has to face the God you know. One more day, He will make a way. Let Him show you how you can lay this down. I'm not strong enough, I can't take anymore. You can lay it down, you can lay it down. And my shipwrecked faith will never get me to shore. You can lay it down, you can lay it down. Can He find me here? Can He keep me from going under? Oh, my soul, you are not alone. There's a place where fear has to face the God you know. One more day, He will make a way. Let Him show you how you can lay this down. 'Cause you're so you are not alone.
Listen, we are not alone, not at all, and our God is an amazing God who just wants to feel our love, right? Wants to feel our presence and he wants us to feel his presence, wants us to be in his presence. And, how do we do that? We do that by worship. We do that by, Good news for feet. Very interesting. Worship, reading the word, good news for feet. This is a very interesting broadcast. A name. Alright. So let me go ahead and bring our friends on Kitty Live. Okay, guys, we broadcast on many different platforms. So we broadcast on YouTube, YouNow, Live.me, Live.me. There we go. Live.me, DLive.io. Thanks so much for joining, Bobby Carter. Ashley, thank you so much for sharing out on YouNow. YouTube, YouNow, Live.me, DLive.tv, Periscope, Facebook, Twitch, Smashcast, FC2, Peaks, Mixer, Loots, Instajib, Vaughn Live, Africa TV, OK.ru, and Kitty Live. And that's right. So Kitty Live and Live.me don't get the same, unfortunately. They don't get the same broadcast that all the rest of the platforms get. That's why I bring them on after the music and after the song, because we really just going to get the word out into those places, because it'll sound weird, maybe. Or look here, you have no idea how much you needed this time. Listen, I was telling my pastor this, believe it or not. I was telling my pastor this. I said, you know what I do? I sit there and I pray before I go to bed. And I say, ask God, do you want me to go on a broadcast or do you not? My flesh wants to go lay my head down on the pillow and just go to sleep. Alright? And I just want to go to sleep. And, when you get that nudge that says, go broadcast. Every single time I listen and be obedient and go on broadcast, someone comes on, like yourself, Ashley, and says, you have no idea how much I need this, or I really needed to pray tonight, or I'm glad you're here, or thank you for being here and sharing the word and bringing me out of a bad place. Listen, we're all in some bad places for sure sometimes, and I am glad that there are people on live stream, and I have friends that I can reach out to who understand the struggles of being a Christian, right? This world is overwhelming at times, and for us to be able to come here, share the word with each other, lift each other up, iron sharpening iron, for being able to go out into this world, what is just a lot of craziness, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of overthinking everything. We've got kids that are in middle school that are worried about, all kinds of crazy stuff that like you wouldn't even think that someone of their age should even be thinking about. And it is just crazy how that stuff happens. And so thank you so much for saying that, Ashley. You encourage me, and I thank you so much, because not very many people encourage the encouragers, right? So thank you for being here, and I hope that I am an encourager and I am helping people, maybe get into their word a little bit, or just spend time in God's presence with God's people. So good news for feet. This is going to be an interesting one. Not good booze. Oh my goodness. Good news for feet. Very interesting broadcast title for today. We'll probably get all kinds of jokers on some of these platforms, but that's alright. After a while of helping hold others up, we tend to fall ourselves. Listen, it's truth. It's truth. I got my sleepy time tea, so we better get this done before it starts taking effects on me. All right. Let's get into the word for tonight. Into the word. And what does our word have to say for today? Our Bible is Psalm 110. Guys, we are getting really close. We're only a few away from the longest psalm ever. You guys know what it is. Soon, within a few days or a week, we will be embarking upon the good old Psalm 119. So we'll be ready for that one. Hopefully it'll be an early broadcast day for that one, because it's going to take some time to go through that one for sure. Hey, that's not my Bible screen. What's going on? I picked the wrong screen. Hold on. Let me pick the right screen. There it is. Alright, now we got the right screen. Okay. So, I use theblueletterbible.org as the website that I use to read from. We read from the New King James Version, and it's just because it's an easier read. I comprehend it better than King James, for sure, because I don't, I'm not an old English person. 11111 11111. I get that every once in a while over here on live.me. Someone comes in and puts all ones. It's weird. Don't understand it, but that's alright. Alright, so you could always split up someone. Yeah, I could, but I don't know. We'll see. Alright, let's read. So this has got some good context to it, okay? Who am I that the Lord of all the earth? There we go. What's up, Angel Girl? Parting Company, thanks for joining. So this is really good. 11111. I don't know if you know what that means, Edwin. If it's not bad, let me know. Just send it. If it's bad, send it to me in a message. Don't type it in the chat if it's bad. I have no idea what it means or if it does mean anything, but that's alright. Thanks so much for all the super hearts. Thank you so much for super hearts. Hopefully soon the super hearts program will enact in and we'll be able to do this. So this is a really good, it's a very short chapter, but it is interesting, okay? So this is the announcement of Messiah's return. And if you look in the Blue Letter Bible, they have great things in here, like tools that we can use, that you can go ahead and you can learn some good old Greek down here, right? The Septuagint, and then you can also learn from the Messianic, so you can learn in Hebrew as well if you're really interested. Yeah, clean up your yeah. But you can definitely learn stuff. So if you wanted to learn what some of these sayings are and what their meanings are, you can certainly do this, right? This is also one that's very interesting. This is one of the verses that our friends in the Black Hebrew Israelites use to claim their thing. So, going through a divorce, please pray for greater good for all. Here's what I say. Lord Heavenly Father, we just lift up that family that's being separated apart, Lord. Lord, we just ask that there be an understanding, Lord. Let that husband and wife look at each other just as they did the first day that they saw each other, Lord, and let them just fall back in love again, and just take and let them be able to see that love with each other, so that way they can go ahead and repair and rebuild that relationship, Lord, so that way your design, your will is done on this, Lord, if it is your will. We just ask for a way, Lord, and if it has to be separated, then let that be as well, without too much heartbreak, too much anger and hatred and frustration. Lord, let them separate peacefully and figure out what it is that they need to do to do that and to achieve that. So Lord, we just ask for peace and comfort to come over them, over the whole situation, Lord. Lord, we don't like the idea of couples separating, Lord, but we also know that there's certain times when we do need to have that. So we just ask for some peace in the situation. In your mighty and powerful Son's name we pray. Amen and amen. All right. I heard you're not supposed to broadcast and drive. That's good, because I'm not driving, so you are absolutely true. So, here we go. Psalm 110. Here we go. A Psalm of David. The Lord said to my Lord, look at this. The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, till I make your enemies your footstool. The Lord shall send the rod of your strength out of Zion, rule in the midst of your enemies. Your people shall be volunteers in the day of your power, in the beauties of holiness, from the womb of the morning. You have the dew of your youth. The Lord has sworn and will not relent. You are a priest forever, according to the order of that person. Thing, not sure. Let's go look it up. What is that word? Let's hear what it says. You ready?
Strong's H 4442. Melchizedek.
What?
Melchizedek.
Melchizedek. Melchizedek. Very interesting. Melchizedek. Alright. Now I know how to say it. I'll probably never run into that word again, but I'll know how to say it. Maybe. So according to the Melchizedek, I'm going to go look that up. I'm going to figure out what that is. The Lord is at your right hand. He shall execute kings in the day of his wrath. He shall judge among the nations. He shall fill the places with dead bodies. He shall execute the heads of many countries. He shall drink of the brook by the wayside. Therefore he shall lift up the head. There's some very interesting words in there tonight. Some very interesting words. If this is supposed to be the Messiah's reign, very interesting. That's calling in what? Acts. So this isn't even talking about... We might come back to this in a minute. We might come back to this in a minute. I've got some thoughts. I got some thoughts. Always got thoughts. But I want to make sure we get through our material tonight first as well. So thanks. Bravo! Thank you, Career Air. Thank you. Alrighty. So, can't say your name, but thanks. Can men over 28 add me to WhatsApp? My WhatsApp. Yeah. No, I don't think so, because I'm going to... sure what you're talking about, Lillian. We don't do that kind of stuff here, but you can certainly take it on to some other somebody else's broadcast. Thank you. Thank you. Anyways, our daily bread devotional. Here it is. Did you guys get your new ones? I don't even know if I got my package yet. I did get my package. Where? Oh, it must be downstairs still. Alright. Did you get your new one? Did you? Go to the website, odb.org, right? Or stop over at your church. Might have a copy of this thing. If they don't have a copy of it, go to that website right there. That website, and you can get your own copy. They'll send you in paper, or you can download the app. You can have it text message to you. You can have it right on the web page. You can have it come to you in a what do you call it? Facebook Messenger. There's all kinds of ways. Jordan Toolsey's in the house. Jordan Toolsey's in the house. How you doing, my friend? How you doing? How you doing? Thanks for joining. So today we read from the Our Daily Bread. Our Daily Bread is a free publication, and you should be able to get it at your church. If not, if you're in the Buffalo area and you want a copy, let me know. And even if you're driving through, I will meet up with you for coffee, and we can chat a little bit, and I can get you your own free copy, because I am an Our Daily Bread ambassador, and I do have permission from Our Daily Bread to read this on my broadcast. So now that all the formalities are taken care of, let's get into this. All right. So for Tuesday, October 22nd, and it still is yet. The title is Good News for Feet, and is written by Mart Dehaan. The ad brought a smile to my face. The most comfortable socks in the history of feet. Then, extending its claim to good news for feet even further, the advertiser said that because the socks remain the most requested clothing item at homeless shelters, for every pair of socks purchased, the company will donate a pair to someone in need. Imagine the smile when Jesus healed the feet of a man who hadn't been able to walk for 38 years. That's in John chapter 5 verses 2 through 8, by the way. Now imagine the opposite look on the faces of the temple officials who weren't impressed by Jesus' care for the feet or the heart of someone who had gone without help for so long. They accused the man and Jesus of breaking a religious law that allows no work to be done on the Sabbath. They saw rules where Jesus saw the need for mercy. At this point, the man didn't even know who had given him new feet. Only later would he be able to say that it was Jesus who had made him well. The same Jesus who would allow his own feet to be nailed to a tree to offer that man and us the best news in history of broken bodies, minds, and hearts. Thanks for joining, Mama Penguin. That was written by Mart Dehaan. Questions. You ready for this one? What needs do you see in those around you? And in what ways have you seen Jesus meet your own needs? So you ready? Tell someone else how Jesus has made you well. You ready? And you want to learn about how to learn more about this life after Christ. It says go to christianuniversity.org, capital N, capital T, 111. Check it out. Alright. Check it out. Alright, so we got plenty of broadcasts still going on yet. And what do you guys think about that one, right? You know, I love how they take like a very interesting topic and always wrap it into somehow Jesus, right? It's always something Jesus, and it's really, really cool. Thank you, Front, for liking the broadcast on Kitty Live. I do appreciate that. Thank you so much for the hearts. Everybody, thank you for your hearts, your invites, your follows, your shares, all that stuff. Guys, we are sitting at, I don't even know. Let's do a little heart count. We're at 12,813,949 hearts on Periscope. That's crazy. And we have 472,000 stars. So that is quite a bit of super hearts. And I do thank you guys so much for that. One of these days I will hopefully be able to get that cashed in. And when I do, guaranteed that money is going back into this ministry whenever that happens. And that's the same thing with props over on YouNow. If there is any money, same thing with the cryptocurrency that's on DLive. If there is any that is made that I'm able to cash in, that money will go back into this ministry to pay for new computers and new things like that. Hey, Katie Marie, I haven't seen you in about a minute. Thanks so much for coming on the broadcast on Facebook. And so, don't worry. I'm not here to make money. I'm not here for you to give me super hearts. I'm not here for you to give me, coins and other things and all this other things. If you do, that's great. I will use it to the best of my ability, as long as I'm able to, right? It's been a while. God bless. Been so tired, exhausted, physically, emotionally drained. 7th day working straight. Just have one more day tomorrow, and then you have 2 days off. Well, praise God for 2 days off, and one more day after one more day of work. I wish I could have. A day, 2 days off after one more day of work. There you go. I said it. We'll pray for you though. Hold on a second. Lord Heavenly Father, we just lift up Katie Marie tonight, Lord. We just ask that you that you just give her some supernatural energy, Lord, to be able to endure the next day, to be able to rest on 2 more days after that, Lord. We just ask for that to be a wonderful time of rest, a time to get into your word for her, Lord, and be able to just celebrate you and celebrate rest. Lord, we ask this in your mighty and powerful Son's name, just to see over that, if it is your will. We ask that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, while we're at it, I forgot to flip the screen. Can you pray for your family? Sure, absolutely. What are we praying about? Listen, we want to be specific, but if it's something private, that's fine. We can just make it be, hey, Marshmallow Man. We can just say for unspoken, it's fine. I don't want anybody to ever feel embarrassed on here, but if you do have a prayer request and you don't want to say it in the chat, you can certainly either message me privately, I will pray for you for sure, or if you just want to say, listen, God knows what the problem is, or what it may be, or whatever the situation is. He knows, and he's just waiting for you and you and you and you and you to pray. So let's pray. Let's activate that. Thanks so much for joining, Teddy. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Bishal, for liking the broadcast. Thank you so much. On there, I see the big, huge delay in my broadcast today. It's very interesting. Hey, was it Daisu? Thanks for joining. Marshmallow Man, Progressive Pilgrim, Adam, how are you doing, friend? We're praying for people, so if you got any prayer requests, or praise reports, anything like that, you can certainly get into it. Let's pray. Let's lift up Ashley. She's not responding just yet, so hopefully everything's okay over there. So let's just lift her up and her family. Lord, we thank you so much for Ashley and for her presence and for her seeking and just reaching out to you, Lord. Lord, we just we lift up our sister, and we just ask that you bring the family together. Whatever that situation is over there, Lord, we just ask that you bring that family together and bring them back into union, into a place where their focus is on you, Lord, and that they're showing each other that same love that you show towards us. Lord, we just ask for that unity in the family, and if there's any way to make it happen, Lord, we just ask that it be done. If it is your will, we ask it to be done. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. And he gone. Amen, amen, amen. Gangster Wife, thanks for joining. We do get some very interesting usernames sometimes. But that's alright. Alright. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. This is what we do. I shouldn't say. I gotta stop saying that. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. Or no problem, right? It's my pleasure. That's what I should be saying. 'Cause that's more of a positive. It's more of a positive connotation, right? So yeah, we'll get some of this stuff out of the way while we're waiting if anybody else has any. So we, as a Jesus Did It team, if you guys didn't know, may or may not know, this is a Jesus Did It broadcast. So basically, we have a ministry. I'm one of the broadcasters, and you can visit us at JesusDidIt.org. Check out the website. I don't think I did that today. I didn't do that today. Let's do that real quick. I totally forgot to do that. Check out the website at JesusDidIt.org. Right? You can join us on our Facebook group right there. Goodness, what is that? Do it for Billy. Go Billy. I have no idea what you're talking about, but sure. As long as it's not, I don't see anything swears in there, and it doesn't look very formatted well, so thanks for blowing up my chat with a horrible blocks of dotted thingies. Lord save you. You need it. Anyways, we all need it. Anyways, check out the website, JesusDidIt.org. If you want to grab any more of the socials, you can go to linktr.ee/JasonRWallace7, and you can catch the rest of the social medias that I am on. In case your platform may stop being there, right? You're Hindu? Well, thank you so much for joining. I have a couple friends who are Hindu. And, yeah. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. So, there's the affirmations. You hate Muslims. Well, hate's a really strong word. I really don't hate very many people. Right? I may not be... How do I want to say this? I may not believe in what they believe in, right? And I may not believe in what you believe in. Muslims can be really powerful. Of course, anybody can be really powerful, right? Any group of people can become powerful, right? But we know one thing here as Christians, that our God has already won the war. He's already won this battle, so... they are fear-mongering religion who believe in killing. They work out their legs, and the power comes from the legs. Well, it is what it is, I guess. So anyways, there is the website, JesusDidIt.org. Take a look at it. There is the official Jesus Did It team right there. You'll make sure you follow those guys. Right there, power comes from legs. I guess. It's very interesting. They work out, the power comes from their leg. I don't know, one guy wrote that. I have no idea. I've got someone named Pilot, Raptor, and P. Masur. Somebody there. You guys have got some stuff typing, so I have no idea. I have no idea what you're talking about, but sure. Anyways, as long as it's not swearing, I'm really not. Doesn't matter. Doesn't bother me one bit. So praise the Lord. Holy Hand grenade. Did you see that battle? I have no idea what that is. Kumbaya. You guys are hilarious. Oh my goodness, it's so funny. Anyway, make sure you're following the Jesus Did It account, because on Periscope and on Facebook, because we broadcast monthly broadcast, and this month's topic is it's a pretty difficult and hits home with a lot of people. And us as Christians, we need to talk more about it. We need to speak more about it, understand it, and there we go. Do you feel like suicide is always bad? Absolutely. Death is never an option, right? Until you have officially been, to the end of your road, right? Living a long life is most important. So, but we'll talk more about that on the broadcast on this Saturday, October 26th at 6:30 p.m. on Facebook Live and the Jesus Did It TV account on Facebook and Periscope. We're trying to get the other platforms just fitting your religion after the whole Jamestown thing you guys did. Well, number one, I did nothing. So, don't blame me. I did nothing. It was not me. So whatever you're implicating me with, I had no personal in there. So, there you go. JesusDidIt.org. Absolutely. Jesus Irish. What? Anyways, come visit the broadcast. The guys on Twitch are very interesting tonight. Like I said, it's usually a very interesting broadcast title, and people come in and try to get it version. No, I'm not getting it. But anyways, hey, you have fun with whatever you want to do. Jokesters will be jokesters. That's how that works. Alright. Alright, we'll drink some tea. Mary was no version. Oh my goodness. Anyways, I think someone doesn't know their words too well, so they're reaching. I gotcha. Well, I'm so sorry. Well, that was the right there. Right there. Pilot Raptor. See you later. Bye-bye. He gone. I'm not gonna play no games with that. My cup changed colors did, because it's got yellow, and it's like yellow. Anything that has a yellow or green, it changes color. So there you go. No idea what you're laughing about, P. Marsh, but it's okay. Anywho, we're all done with that. Yeah, I'm getting too repetitive. Yeah. Let me say goodbye to you too. I don't normally like blocking people, but when they become annoying with continuous repetitive mixing of words, bye-bye. Still doing it. Oh my goodness. It's still in the chat. That's so interesting. Don't mock your only viewers. I'm not mocking anybody. Oh, I gotta go take care of business here, guys. Hold on. This is what happens when the integration doesn't work so good. I just blocked it from the chat. You're able to see. For me seeing your chat, but apparently it's still in the stream, which is really interesting. Dan Cloud's in the house. Thanks so much for joining, Dan Cloud. So guys, any more prayer requests or praise reports? Otherwise, we are going to start shutting it down because it's getting late. And we have 1,129 viewers on Periscope. So we are, woo! Oh my goodness, he's still at it. Kumbaya. Can you say a prayer for you, homie? Yeah. I almost want to go to Twitch. Oh, that's fine. Good news for the feet. Kim the Fun One. Brought you in here asking questions, didn't it? Gonna have to catch the replay because that was part of our Daily Bread devotional. If you follow our Daily Bread, you'll know that that's... Oh my goodness, these guys. The Lord will pay you well. Water is nice in Twitch Town. You guys are too much. As long as there's no swearing, I'm alright. You guys are fine. Please pray for me and your sister. Absolutely. Be right back. Please say a prayer. Bro, please say a prayer. Well, you know what? I don't know what you want to pray about. So, you are my need. What? Alright. That one got you the block. You got the block. You don't say that. Would you like it as well? P. Marshall, I don't think it's not bad. This other person is... Oh my goodness. Any more songs? Yes, we're going to do no more songs. Absolutely, we're going to. Please pray for you and your sister. Absolutely. Lord Heavenly Father, we lift up Sarah and Myri. Lord, we just... We ask for healing in their bodies. Lord, you know what the issues are from all of the esophagus and the acid reflux and other things that are going on there. Lord, we just lift up high blood pressure, and Lord, we just ask for healing in Jesus' mighty and powerful name. Lord, just like you healed that man's feet after 38 years, Lord, we just ask that you heal our friends here, Lord. In your mighty and powerful Son's name we pray. Amen and amen. Alright. Amen. I just understood what you meant. What that meant. Yeah, no, that's why I got rid of it. Yeah. I don't play games like that. Hateful words are not good. Your knee hurts. Your knee gear. Yeah, I bet it did too. Nice try. Bye. See? That's what people do. They try to get you to say bad words, and then they snip it on a video, and then they save it, and then they upload it to YouTube, and no, we ain't playing that games. You're banned, and that is it. I am playing games. What's going on? LM85C3959CF487A3. Thanks for joining the broadcast. What's going on? What is his name? S. What is that? Ikasan. I'm not going to mess up your name, but welcome and thanks for joining. Alright. right. I think we got all our prayers in. Whew. Goodness. I'll tell you what. That guy almost got me swearing. Almost got me saying bad words. You should know better than that. You should know better than that. So anyways, hey Jason, my grandpa's not doing well. I'm already following you. What's going on with grandpa, man? In the hospital or anything? What? He's on a ventilator now. He fell. Oh goodness. Alright, let's lift him up in prayer. Good night. Thanks for sharing the word. It is well needed tonight. You are absolutely welcome, Ashley. Thank you so much for joining. We're going to play music in a minute. I'm just going to pray for this gentleman and we're going to head on out. About done. So, getting tired. I found that song too, but I gotta sing it. So Lord, we lift up Terry's grandfather tonight, Lord. We know that he has taken a fall, Lord, and he's on a ventilator. Lord, we just ask for healing, for whatever the reason is for the ventilator, Lord, and healing for the fall. If there's anything broken or anything bruised, sprained, or just damaged, Lord, we just ask for healing in his body, in his grandfather's body. In Jesus' mighty and powerful name we pray. We lift him up. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And amen. Alright. Let's get some of these formalities. You're Brian. Okay, Brian. They found a blood clot. Oh no, we speak against that blood clot. We ask that that blood clot be moved and removed. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And amen. So, if you need your church, your business, or your own personal live streaming efforts up and moving, I helped a couple other people get themselves up and running, and I certainly can help you if you need help with how to broadcast, any coaching, things like that. If it's something simple, I can help you out real quickly. I will certainly do that. But if it's for a church or a business, it's going to take some time. Let's get an email going with each other. Let's start talking. Let's figure out what your budget is, what your plans are, how you'd like to deliver this message, or whatever it is you're trying to do, so I can help you get in the right place. This is what I do. So I help you guys out, and you know, we work together to figure it out. So please, what was that, Melanie? I'm learning the word combinations to be aware of now. You started broadcasting. You started broadcasting again? Well, praise God. That's awesome. If you're broadcasting now, I will. Let me make sure I know I'm following you, but I'm making sure you're on. Well, I can't get it to go now. This thing's acting silly. There it goes. Oh, you already are. So when you go on broadcast, I'll know. It'll make the noise. So definitely. Alright, well, let's pray on out, and then let's play some music. Alright. So, Lord Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time tonight, Lord. We thank you for this opportunity to be able to get into your word, to be able to sing worship songs to you, to be able to praise you, God, to be able to pray for others, Lord, and be able to lift up their prayer requests. Lord, we just lift up all those prayer requests to you, Lord, and we ask that they be done and completed in your mighty and powerful Son's name. Lord, I lift up my friend John tonight, who might be struggling with some things. Lord, we lift up him and his girlfriend. Lord, we just ask for healing for them, for their relationship, and for their just their other requests. Lord, we just lift up them tonight as well, Lord, and I lift up my wife for healing in her knees. Lord, we just ask for direction from the doctors to be able to finally get these knees repaired completely. So Lord, we just ask for healing in her knees in Jesus' mighty and powerful name. We pray tonight, Lord. We lift up all these prayer requests, and we thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be able to show our love for you, Lord. Lord, we just thank you so much for your love, for your grace, for your mercy that is instilled upon us, Lord. Lord, we worship you, and we honor you, and we give you so much thanks for everything that you do for us. In your mighty and powerful Son's name we pray. Amen and amen. Alright, guys. I love you all. let's get some rest, because this time, midnight. Yeah, it's time for some sleep. Alright, you guys have a nice night. Get some rest. Be blessed. Know that Jesus Christ loves you. Because that is the most important person to know that loves you. So, let's start shutting this thing down. Because I think my laptop is getting a little mad at me. So, there we go. You guys, I love y'all. See you next time. We're going to pull up and do a song. I may play, just going to warn you, I may play a not Christian song. I may play a secular song. So please don't get offended if I play one of those. Alright? Love you guys. Get some rest. Be blessed. Good night.
I can only imagine what it'll be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Yeah.
Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in all of you be still?
Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak it all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
I can only imagine when that day comes and I find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine when all I will do is forever worship you. I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still?
Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak it all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, yeah.
Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe forever, forever worship you. I can only imagine.
Love that song.
I feel that sometimes this world gives you these thoughts that you have to put labels on yourself. And really the only label we need to know is that we are God's child. That's the only label we need.
Who am I that the Lord of all the earth would care to know my name, care to feel my hurt? Who am I that the bright and morning star would choose to light the way for my ever-wandering heart? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow, a wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling, Lord, you catch me when I'm falling, and you told me who I am. I am yours, I am yours. Who am I that the eyes that see my sin would look on me with love and watch me rise again? Who am I that the voice to calm the sea would call out through the rain and calm the storm in me? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow, a wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling, and catch me when I'm falling, and you told me who I am. I am yours. Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow, a wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling, Lord, you catch me when I'm falling, and you've told me who I am. I am yours. I am yours. I shall I fear? Whom shall I fear? 'Cause I am yours. I am yours.
There goes my heart beating, 'cause you are the reason I'm losing my sleep. Please come back now.
There goes my mind racing, and you are the reason that I'm still breathing. I'm hopeless now.
I climb every mountain and swim every ocean,
Just to be with you and fix what I've broken.
oh, 'cause I need you to see that you are the reason.
There goes my hand shaking, you are the reason. My heart keeps bleeding, I need you now. Oh,
If I could turn back the clock, I'll make sure the light, the fear, the time I spend every hour of every day keeping you safe. I climb every mountain and swim every ocean, just to be with you and fix what I'm broken. Oh, 'cause I need you to see that you are the reason.
you are the reason. Oh,
I need you hold me tonight. I climb every mountain
and swim every ocean, just to be with you and fix what I've broken. 'Cause I need you to see
that you are the reason. There's a place where mercy reigns and never dies.
There's a place where streams of grace flow deep and wide,
where all the love I've ever found
comes like a flood, comes flowing down. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in all of you, I'm in all of you. Where your love ran red and my sin washed white, I owe to you, I owe to you, Jesus. There's a place where sin and shame are powerless. Amen. Where my heart has peace with God and forgiveness,
Where all the love I've ever found
comes like a flood, comes flowing down. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in all of you, I'm in all of you. Where your love ran red and my sin washed white, I owe all to you, I owe all to you. Here my hope is found, here on holy ground. Here I bow down, here I bow down. Here with open arms, here you save my life. Here I bow down, here I bow. At the cross, I surrender